Good morning. Morning. My name is John Resta. I've known Bill Blewett for over 4 decades. I've been his friend for at least 3 of those decades. It's not that we were enemies, we just didn't hang out together at the time. Before we get started, I've been asked to remind everyone if I'd like to leave a message for the family. These are in the back to the right, and Sue asked me to say that there are 2 pairs of sunglasses so far at the sign-in, if you want. Bill was first a husband, a father, a grandfather, a brother. Many of his family are here today from Tennessee, I think from Texas, Oklahoma, of course, Oklahoma, to help honor him and to help his family, as well as you, get through this difficult time. And I'd like to acknowledge their presence and thank them for making that long drive. I saw Texas plates out there, so I think somebody drove from Texas, somewhere. Until the end of his days, he identified as a runner. If you had ever asked Bill who he was, he would tell you. You can see a lot here to the right. He spent a good part of the last half of his life coaching past and current generations of runners. Many of them are in this room. You can tell the people he coached versus the people that he ran with. The people he ran with are my age or older. We're all limping. We all walk like our feet hurt. We wear hokas because they don't make our feet hurt. Where the people he coached, the runners he coached, are still standing up pretty straight, still walking pretty good, don't walk with a limp. They'll catch up with us. He served this community. He was a volunteer with the Bel Air Recreation Committee for 30 plus years. He was a coach. He was a program chairperson responsible for the Bill Brown Cross Country Series and the Hartford Invitational Junior Track Meet. He served as the, co-chairman of the Bel Air Festival for the Arts with his wife. And they've been I am that now, and he's a big resource for me and helped me out up until last summer, laying out fields. He was a member of our board of directors. And as a member of the board of directors, he was advocating for children all the time, trying to make sports and athletics accessible and, most importantly, fun for all. And that is something that a lot of times we miss with sports today, and he never did it. I have my fellow Bel Air Rec Committee board members are sitting along the back there. We're here to represent those who couldn't be here because Bill was preceded by many of our board members over the last 5 years. So some of their relatives are in the audience now because we're a tight-knit family, which plays into a lot of our relationship with Bill over the years. He was a soldier. He served in the Ohio National Guard, served in the Army Reserve, used to tell stories. He was an infantry soldier. And for those of you who know the Army, infantry soldiers tend to be big, tend to be louder. He wasn't, but he told a story about when he responded. He took a platoon down to quell a prison riot, I think in Texas. Oklahoma? Okay, all right, it was just something. I'm like, Bill with a prison riot, but he did it. So he served, and this is, again, his common theme was service and protection. He was also an engineer who worked for the Army as a civilian. He started in the mid-'70s at Red River Army Depot. For those of you who are outside the Oklahoma, Texas area, it's a small place in the middle of nowhere where we store stuff. And his first job was to write, and he was doing this, I think, as an intern when he was at A&M. Because he had got his master's in industrial engineering from Texas A&M and his bachelor's from Oklahoma in mechanical engineering. He wrote a report on solid waste management, which is near and dear to my heart because I spent a good bit of my career on trash. And we used to talk about that all the time. He was a Rotarian, and we have over here members of his chapter, I think, right? There's a Rotary a gaggle of Rotarians as a chapter, right? And spoke very highly of that, and talked about how that helped him change his life as he continued to work for the community. But his biggest impact is when he came up here to Maryland, became an engineer working in the Army's, I'll say CBRN, but it stands for Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear, and that'll be the last time I say that program. And this is where I first met him and I first got to know him. Now, at this part, I had planned to tell you all a story of a meeting I had with him where we talked about Wetlerite charcoal. People who I told me that you would leave at that point, so I won't. But I was fortunate enough to run into Rick Gecker this morning, and I don't see him, usually if I'd see him standing, this is a big fella, he may have already had to leave, basically told me what Bill was. And what he said was, Bill was a hero who saved lives. And that really spoke to what he did. He was the Army's expert on collective protection. Means nothing to most people. But basically what he did helped protect the United States military, our allies, and our civilian communities to this day. What he invented, what he created, what he designed, what he tested is used today to protect us. Now, it's not that it's so classified I can't talk to you about it. It's just boring unless you're really into that stuff. So I can certainly spend time, and there are people who are actually more expert on this, because I was on the outside looking in saying, no, we need to go to this level, no, we need to go that level, no, we need to go this level. We also connected over youth sports in the 90s when our children became of age, and we decided if anybody was going to yell at them, it would be us. I coached Daniel, his son, on some of his earlier baseball teams. Both Bill and Joann were the perfect parents to have for youth sports. They never complained about playing time. They never complained about what position their son played. They never complained if he sat on the bench. They never yelled at the umpire. They didn't care about uniforms. All of these things were things that we have been fighting against since that time. It helped. Daniel was very talented and dedicated at the earliest age, and so he was in the field most of the time. He didn't strike out much. He didn't make many errors, and so it was real good. It was real easy. His parents didn't have to complain because it was very good. When my son started running cross country, Bill stepped in and helped me because I knew nothing about cross country. He basically told me to, 1, trust the coaches, they're good. 2, as C. Milton Wright, stand at the 1 mile mark because that's where you get the best view of the course. All right, and then that helped me to this day, and it helped me as I went along, that you realize that there are people out there who really, really can help you. Once he joined our board of directors, he joined our choir practice. Okay. We used to have choir practice after every one of our regularly scheduled meetings. And for those of you who don't know, choir practice is a euphemism for drinking in a bar. It's what you say to your spouse, your partner, I'm going to choir practice, because it just doesn't, particularly in front of your children, so it doesn't sound like, well, we're going out drinking afterwards. It doesn't sell, particularly for a group of people who are pledged to help the youth of America. Bill joined us, it was Frank Daggeson, Tom Capello, Dave Coretti in the back, Matt Miller somewhere in the audience, Richard Hicks, myself. We talked about some really deep and important topics at these practices. We talked about family. We talked about growing old. We talked about baseball. They were at the top of our important topics. We also talked about some shallow topics, politics and culture. Sometimes these sessions got very energetic to the point that people came over to see if we were okay. People came over to get involved. People asked if they could join us, because it's not often you see a whole bunch of people arguing and then leave a place hand in hand. The 2016 election night, choir practices are always Tuesdays, was the most memorable I can remember, because like most of the country, we had different opinions on politics. And so we were arguing as the returns came in. Us more vocal people. I'll blame myself. Bill let us take the floor, and we would debate with Frank and Tom, who had the other side. And we argued and talked and everything, and then Bill spoke. And when Bill spoke, the old, Eli Hutton, when he speak, everybody's like this, that kind of stuff. It was worth it, because the look on Frank's face that night when he realized that Bill was on our side and not his was priceless. And to this day, I remember that and smile, to the point that in the 2020 election, we also had choir practice that night. And some of but we just remarked it was boring, because we didn't have we couldn't argue, and we needed to argue. And our ideas got better through that argument. So we talked about how much we missed Frank and Tom. They had already passed, and we remarked that, it's just not the same. And I think we're going to suffer from that as we go on. I'll miss these and the other conversations I've had with him. I've had a lot of conversations with Bill over the last couple of years. We spent a lot of time together. He helped me figure out how to navigate life as a retiree, because he was a couple of years ahead of me. And it was difficult for me, and he helped shepherd me through the way, like he does with lots of things. He taught me how to listen better. I've known Bill probably since the summer of 1980, when I would see him running, thinking around the airfield at Edgewood, and I think, well, I could catch up to that guy. He's old. He'd be in his car leaving before I finished, that kind of stuff. I didn't know he was a pilot until I read his obituary. In fact, none of us knew he was a pilot. So if you didn't, now granted, maybe some of you flew with him, but he did not tell you about what he did, who he was, all that kind of stuff. It took a while to get through things. And that was the guy, so he taught me to listen better. He taught me how to be a better person, because he was kind, always kind. And when I saw him in certain times when he was not feeling real well, he would get sharp, and it was so head-snapping that you said to yourself, whoa, you must not really feel good. But then we went to lunch, and he got better. So I think he was hangry when we did that, mostly. And he taught me to be a better friend, and I will cherish that. He is and was someone worth knowing. And like many of you, I will miss him deeply. Thank you for coming today to honor him. We have a fairly full schedule. Please pay attention, because you might learn something about him as well. Who knows? He might have been a neurosurgeon at one point and didn't tell anybody about that. But he it turns out he was really a spy for the CIA, and this was all it covered, right? But we'll find out. He was very, very, very deep. And I wish I had gotten to know the depths that is fathom. Thank you.
They good?
That's all you suppose.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. The rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I just want to thank you all for coming today to support our family and to honor the life of my beloved Bill. To this wonderful community, thank you for all you've done for us over the last 2.5 years. Every conversation, every text, every email, every visit, every piece, every pot of food. There was so much on all these little things mattered to our family and helped us during a really hard 2.5 years. To JD, Daniel, Annie, and Ryan, Dad and I often said, how lucky are we? A friend of mine said today, you're not just lucky, you have remarkable children. And I'll tell you, I couldn't have imagined what they have done for us. When Bill was first diagnosed, he was in the hospital for 8 days, and Dan said, Mom, it's day 4, and we're gonna get a hotel for you. And I said, well, I'm spending the night in the room again. And the next day he showed up and he said, you can stay during the day. I've got tonight, Janie's got tomorrow, and Annie's got the next night. They threw us a 40th anniversary party. They threw us a book launch for Bill's book. And we never felt alone. Food, texts, videos, so much love from my family. I'll never, ever forget it. And Teddy, Ruby, and Ada, you made Papa so happy with your big smiles, and he loved to watch you build, Teddy. He loved to watch you dance, Ruby. You brought him so much joy. Bill died from a very rare leukemia, and he was on chemo for 2 years straight, and it caused him to have a lot of transfusions, over 200. And I'll tell you, there isn't a human being that I know who could survive what he did with a lot of grace and humility. But, in the end, he couldn't run or walk, and that was very hard for him. But there were some people who really supported us, and especially Bill. And John, who just spoke, was one of them. He took Bill to many transfusions, drives to Baltimore and here. And in the end, John, instead of texting me and asking, could I take Bill? He would just text and say, I've got Bill on Wednesday. John will never forget all you've done for us. Larry Pickett, you listened so well. And thank you for all the times you took Bill as well. He just valued the friendship of the two of you so much, and so many people in this room. I wasn't planning this, but I'd like to tell a quick story because so many of you have said, I don't know, there are things I just didn't know about Bill. I heard it over and over again from really even good friends. And so I thought maybe I should share this story. After Bill and I met, our first date, when he dropped me off at midnight in Baltimore, he had to drive back to Hartford County. And when he dropped me off, I said, by the way, I'm going to run this 8-mile subway race tomorrow in Baltimore, and I'm hoping I can just finish. And he said, oh, well, I haven't really trained for that, but maybe I'll see you there. Well, I didn't think anything of it, because training to me was like running a couple miles with my sister and hoping that I'll finish an 8-mile race. So, he got back to Hartford County at 1, and by 7 a.m. he was back in Baltimore before I even got there. And when I got there, he said, my friends, Pam and George, will hold our sweatpants for us and meet us at the finish line. And I said, well, it's October 10th, and it's really cold outside, and I'm not planning to break a sweat. So I don't really have shorts on underneath, so I think I'm just going to keep mine on. And he said, oh, okay. So he sat down on the curb, and he took off his sweatpants, and I was like, oh my, he's a runner. And then they blew the whistle for everyone to gather for the start of the race, and Bill said quietly, I'm going to go to the front. And I said, I'm going to go to the back. And so Bill came in fourth, first in his age group. I came in 1,004th. There were 1,010 runners. And afterwards, we went out to lunch, and I said, why didn't you tell me you were a really good runner? And he said, it didn't come up in conversation. Over 41 years, I learned I really had to dig deep and ask good questions to get things out of my husband, the quiet, introverted man that he is. But all these awards, Bill was really proud of his running accomplishments and all of his accomplishments in life and what he did through his work. But when I saw him that night, the first time, before I knew he was a runner, and I remember looking in his eyes, and there's a picture here of the two of us when we were first dating. And I just remember seeing kindness and a young wisdom in his eyes and a really quiet strength. And that's the man I'll remember. Bill enjoyed running, and he was proud of his abilities. But running gave him confidence, a self-discipline, and it was really his form of prayer and meditation. It was in the silence of his runs, that quiet flow, that he would connect to a larger field. I'd say a larger field of consciousness or the bigger mind. And he'd come home from a run, and the problem that he had to solve at work, he would just start drawing the filter system. Or if we had had an argument, he'd come back and realize I was right. And while Bill leaned into so many things that gave him purpose, I think the thing he loved the most was really just coaching the kids. And we had 3 or 4 runners, that he coached a year in the 80s who came back to visit him. And they were the highlights for him. And some of them were here today, so we're watching virtually. They just touched his life, and I know he touched theirs. And he loved the Bill Brown races because he loved running, and he wanted kids just to have fun, just to taste it and see if it was their thing, because it gave him so much joy in his life. The week before Bill died, it was at 5 a.m. that Bill said, I found peace in deciding not to have any more transfusions. And it was time to call hospice. He said he lived his life. I think he lived his life the best he could. And this last quote in the book that Bill wrote, it's taken from the movie Chariots of Fire, and it sums up, I think, how this happened for Bill at the end. The quote is, I have no formula for winning the race. Everyone runs in their own way. And where does the power come from to see the race to the end? It comes from within. So I now have a little blessing for my beloved. Blessed are we who remember and savor the small things about Bill. We remember the wide, closed-mouth grin with eyes that twinkled when he was happy. We remember his giddy giggle when he was excited. His anxious laugh when he was in trouble with me. The way he ran like a deer, it was a sight to behold. The way he stood, clipboard and notepad in hand, at races and track meets, or when he was interviewing runners. The sound of his kind voice and dry sense of humor, quick, quiet comebacks when you least expected it. Blessed are we when our grief leaks out so vulnerably, and we embrace it because we know that grief and sadness equals deep love. Blessed are we when others hold us in our sadness, listening deeply, knowing there are no words and nothing they can do. Blessed are we who experience Bill's presence with us now, even in his formless state. O infinite love, you alone know it all. Bill's sufferings, his joys, his hope for his family and friends far and wide, his trust in eternal love beyond this world. You alone knew every step he took, every race he ran. Hold us close, Holy One, and renew our souls. As you welcome Bill to the finish line, greet him with the kind of embrace we long to give. And may we all be blessed by taking a part of Bill with us, the part we love the most, as we move forward in life, feeling body and soul.
Yes. Steve. I see.
I'm telling you Arroyo. Bill Blewett is my contract. I love when I miss him. Next, my mom was going to say a few words.
He said, do not pick up. The seven. Going to Village Steve this.
Hi, I'm Teddy Smalls.
Now that's a
Bill Blewett was a man of many accomplishments in his professional career and in his tenure as a competitive runner. Despite his many accolades, I believe the role he valued most was his duty as a father. And as my dad, he was exceptional. He was slow to anger and quick to inject imagination or humor. When I was little, he made my stuffed animals talk and gave them intricate personalities, to include a bear wearing a tie who would spend his free time with the nuns at John Carroll High School, and another who would drive my Barbie convertible around the house and wreak havoc with my other dolls while I was away. I remember moments in my childhood of playing pretend with my dad. As a kid, you always expect those moments to be brief, like your mom or dad is going to snap out of it and say, "Time to go, put on your shoes or pick up your toys." But I remember specifically feeling the joy of my dad staying in our imagination world for much longer than I thought possible. My dad instilled a sense of worthiness in me. I grew up knowing that I was capable and loved because of the confidence he gave me. I believe that I was magnetized to my incredible husband because my dad showed me what real love looks and feels like, both in how he treated me and how he treated my mom, who was the love of his life. My husband, Ryan, and I got married in 2016, and to this day, the thing people mention most about our wedding is not my flawless bridal beauty, which honestly I peaked that day, but my dad's toast as the father of the bride. It included a cameo by one of the aforementioned stuffed animals named Snowy. It was warm, heartfelt, funny, and touching, and it was executed like a true Toastmaster. I was lucky enough to see the same pure adoration that he had for his children come to life for my own kids, his grandkids. He was the first person to look at photos I posted of them and would study their expressions, looking for clues about the people they would grow up to be. It brought him immense joy to hear stories about their adventures and antics and build Legos or read books with them. I will miss my dad so much. I will miss the 387th retelling of some of his classic stories, like the time he broke his leg, which he always punctuates with the 2 snaps thing that he did, or the story of the day he met my mom. I will miss him calling me his nickname for me, Petunia. I will miss his calm and steady presence and his dry sense of humor. I wish he had more time with us to see my children grow up, something I know he desperately wanted. As he reminded me a few weeks before he died, he will always be with me, and what a gift that is. To conclude, I'd like to share a poem by Merritt Malloy. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men who wait to die. If you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not your light. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away.
Next up was my Uncle JT.
Good morning. I've been thinking all week about how hard it could be to talk about my dad today, but as I put together my thoughts, it occurred to me that if it were hard to talk about him, it'd be the first time in my life it's been hard to talk about Bill Blewett. I've been talking about him to everyone that would listen for my whole life. God, especially as a kid, he was my hero, my idol. I read a lot of books, but I couldn't find a hero that beat him. He was everything I wanted to be in life. This quiet, humble champion was my dad, a Renaissance man who was an expert in so many things, a world-class runner, public speaker. He painted, he did these incredible pencil drawings. He'd been an officer, a writer, a columnist, an engineer. He played the banjo and guitar. We sang music together. And we built things, anything. And he always had time for me and my many questions. Long ago, as the story goes, he'd been called Billy, and he flew around the country in a stunt plane, and he lived this exciting life doing what he wanted. He'd fly in, he'd land, he'd grab his bags from the airplane, run 10 miles to a Motel 6, and get ready to win another race in the morning. But now he was just Bill, and his greatest desire was to spend time with my mom, me, my brother, and my sister when he got home every day at 6 o'clock. He never disappointed me as a father, not once, not in my childhood or my adult life. He was always there for me and our whole family, and he had a special relationship with each of his children. It didn't matter what activities we chose. He taught us to approach them with the same passion, diligence, and perseverance that he approached everything in his life. And he shared in all of them with us. When he was first diagnosed with leukemia after the shock wore off that day, the first clear thought I had was a thought I've had over and over again my whole adult life. How lucky am I to have been born the son of Bill and Joann Blewett, who were such complementary partners, who showed us what love looked like, and created such a safe and warm environment for us to grow and find ourselves. And from that foundation, anything felt possible. My earliest and one of my most frequent memories of being with him were the hundreds of Rasta races that I tagged along with him to, starting when I could just walk and continuing through college when I'd come home and visit, and afterward. Some races we organized, some we didn't, all of which he covered through the Aegis. Sometimes it was 9 people in a John Carroll field, and sometimes it was thousands. But I loved being by his side as he recorded times, interviewed people, was greeted by friend after friend. I wondered how he could be so quiet, but knew so many people. And that was him in his element, watching people in the community compete, congratulating them on their performances, discussing their recent times, taking quotes for the newspaper, dark black hair, bald spot, pen and paper. That's how I see him. He was the timekeeper, the minder of the results. He always took note, he always saw your finish and remembered your last 5 times and took joy in telling you how proud he was of you. And I watched it over and over again. How fitting it feels for this celebration to be so much like one of those races. We'd come home from the races, I'd pull out his albums. You know, he broke his ankle when I was 4, so I never remember seeing him run a race. And I love flipping through, reading all these newspaper articles written about him that he'd pasted in with exciting articles like Blewett blows by runners on beach to victory. Blewett wins 2, sets course record. What if Ryan blew it and Blewett won it? They had big black and white pictures of him crossing the finish lines, and I'd pull out the boxes of all the tarnished silver from the closet and polish them and make him tell me stories, and he would. But he was never boastful, even when I wanted him to be. I always felt like his biggest fan and cheerleader. I'd even get angry at him when the other fathers at school or Boy Scouts would brag about their own victories in high school football or whatever their sport was, and he would never pipe up. But I learned about humility in each of those moments. I mean, our family even debated, do we bring all this memorabilia? Would Dad have wanted that? But we're proud of what he did, and it speaks to how hard he worked and what he accomplished through his dedication. But this is how the world recognized his successes and not what my dad saw as the most meaningful markers of success. When I was 5 or 6, we flew to Oklahoma to his parents' house, and I helped him pull out the biggest, most valuable trophies from college and the Big 8, and pulled them out of their display boxes and closets, silver plates, cups, giant bowls, and we polished them, and we spread them out on blankets, and we took pictures, and just when I thought we were boxing them up to take him home, he started prying his nameplates off. I was heartbroken, but he told me we're donating him to a local running club so other runners can feel what it feels like to win something like that. See, for my dad, running and the encouragement that went along with it was an incredible confidence booster that elevated him to his best self over and over again and helped him to be successful in all aspects of his life. And my dad knew deeply that our bodies are vessels for our spirits, and that in moving our bodies, we too could connect our spirit and our body to the best versions of ourselves. When he moved to Maryland and began his running column, it was because he knew with that encouragement, the encouragement that he felt when he read those articles about himself, and what it did for him was priceless. And he wanted to give that same gift that was given to him to the youth of Harford County over and over, and he did. I always knew what a coach was and how important the concept was to my dad from an early age. I remember him explaining it to me at 4 or 5 when I asked again about my name. You see, I was named after 2 very important people in my life, my grandfathers, John and David, but nicknamed JD at the very same moment over an equally important person in my dad's life, his coach at the University of Oklahoma, J.D. Martin, who had given him the chance to walk onto the varsity team in his freshman year. J.D. Martin, my dad said, was a great champion who'd become a great coach, and without him giving my dad a chance and all of his guidance and knowledge along the way, he might not have ended up at this moment in Maryland with this incredible family he loved so much. Maybe none of us would exist. And I always knew it was my legacy to be the same kind of person as my namesake and my father to others in my life. When I was 8, my dad started a series of cross-country races for youth that continued every year for 32 years, and that I expect will continue this year for the first time without him, that he named after Bill Brown, who was a man that my dad had the utmost respect for as a coach and man of the community. He told me that, like J.D. Martin, Bill Brown had been an impressive runner who had developed into an even more impressive coach, teacher, and beloved figure to his students, that he taught his students and athletes to have respect for themselves and their teammates no matter their race, background, social status, and he taught them to enjoy and be invigorated by their sport. I told him Bill Blewett sounded a lot like Bill Brown. This week I saw a copy of a letter my dad wrote to J.D. Martin 3 years ago, thanking him for that moment in 1965 that changed his life. And he didn't just thank him, he recounted all the good things in his life. My mom, his children, his son-in-law Ryan, his grandchildren, and details about all of us, and said, JD, this wouldn't have happened if not for what you had done for me. And it occurred to me how much that letter reminded me of all the scores of messages we've received this week about the ways my dad has done for others what JD has done for him. It's amazing to me how a passing moment for one can mean so much to another. Perhaps J.D. Martin never gave another thought to how he affected Bill for those 56 years until he received that letter. He took him on his merits. He did what he did over and over for others and for all those who crossed his path. He might have said, Bill, gave you a chance. You earned it. But he empowered Bill to change his own life. And that's the power of a great coach and mentor relationship. My dad was a lot of things to a lot of people, but coach sure sums it up well. When my dad was first diagnosed with leukemia and he was very sick, I reminded him of the incredible strength he displayed when he won the Artesian, New Mexico Marathon in 1972, running up a mountain the whole way at 80 degrees, with the closest runner, the 338, a mile behind him. At 18 miles, he felt the symptoms of heat exhaustion and he had the perfect reason to quit, but he didn't quit, only 8 miles to go. He had driven 500 miles in his Volkswagen Beetle to run this race, and he wasn't giving up. Racing pretty much only himself, he lost 8 of his 154 pounds, and he finished in 2 hours and 51 minutes, a time he was not proud of. But he did not quit. I said, I know you have that strength, and that story's given me strength my whole life. And I reminded him of a lesson he told me over and over again that I think of often. JD, everyday things change, and you have to adapt. How hard it must have been for him to hear his fatherly advice delivered back to him by his son. This time, for the first time, his body wouldn't do what he asked of it, and that realization must have been so hard for him. The over 200 transfusions of blood and platelets and the 2 years of sleepless, pain-filled nights that he endured over and over again to stay with us took more determination than any marathon. He was in so much pain, but he did not quit. He loved us so much, and we loved him, and would have done anything to keep him with us. It'll be easy to honor Bill Blewett in my life with all the tools he's given me and all the love he's invested in me. But it'll be hard to adjust to being here without him. I talk to him almost every day, and I valued his voice in my life more than almost any other person. So I love you, Daddy. I'm glad you aren't in any pain anymore, but I will miss you.
Oh, a dream's like a river, ever changing as it flows. And the dream is just a vessel that must follow where it goes, trying to learn from what's behind you, and never knowing what's in store makes each day a constant battle just to stay between the shores. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry, like a bird upon the wind. These waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Too many times we stand aside, let the water slip away. What we put off till tomorrow has now become today. So don't you sit upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids, dare to dance the tide. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry, like a bird upon the wind. These waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. There's bound to be rough waters, and I know it'll take some falls. With the good Lord as my captain, I can make it through them all. So I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry, like a bird upon the wind. These waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Yes, I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry.
Finally, my Uncle Dad.
I'm a little taller than Teddy. All right, so I know we've all got questions. There are cans of beans on your tables. There are ice cream containers. There are Chick-fil-A containers with plants. And what else do we have here? Gatorade cups, I think we maybe understand. And of course, our beloved AIM toothpaste, the lowliest of toothpaste brands. All these mysteries will be revealed by the end of my speech. You probably didn't know I was obsessed with plants, but you might have known that I was the other athlete in the family. My dad was the runner, I was the baseball player. And I think as my dad and I both circled back at the end of our careers, we both kind of took the same lesson from sports, which is that you kind of forget a lot of the statistics, the times, the ERAs for me. Sometimes I wanted to forget my ERA. But what you really take from sports is the relationships and the feelings and the big moments that you share with other people. And my dad was really blessed to share so much of his second career, after his competitive career ended, with all of you. With so many of you, got to share his love of running and continue the biggest piece of what he got from his sport. So I'll share a quick story that illustrates who my dad was as a coach and as a baseball dad. I don't know why my brain retained this memory, but I was on the highway driving home from a game in which I had pitched spectacularly bad. I don't remember the details, but I was extremely salty about how I pitched. And when I was upset, I would just not want to talk to anyone. I want to fume and let, the smoke come out of my hair when I had hair. And my dad and my mom were good about this. They knew to leave me alone lest I combust. So I was in the passenger seat. We were on I-95 and the window was down, the humidity and the smell of honeysuckle was pouring in, and I was just angry. And my dad was letting it go, but as he always did, he eventually found a moment and he said, you threw some really great curveballs today. I don't think I've ever seen your curveball as sharp as it was today. And that was certainly a lie. I knew it was a lie. I'm like, Dad, you saw how far those curveballs got turned around. But I think I retained that memory because it just was another example of how he was my safety net. He wanted everyone to know that they were loved beyond what they could do on the track, the cross-country course, or the baseball field. But I think what's really interesting about people and the way we recall our memories of them, people are really interesting because we have so many quirks, and what really jogs a lot of memories, especially for me, are little objects, right? And around this room, you'll see objects. My dad loved ice cream. Not as much as my mom, but sometimes it was unclear which he wanted to cuddle towards, his bowl of ice cream, or, depending on what terms they were on. He loved his Oklahoma chili and his beans. He loved Chick-fil-A. He never wasted a moment to, pass along a dad joke. And he loved grocery shopping. If you didn't see my dad at the track or at work, he was grocery shopping for the same 11 items. He was not a culinary genius. But he just loved going to the grocery store. And whatever gene that is, chromosome 31, I have that same one. And my sister and I share a memory. We were at the kitchen table, and he just came in with a couple sacks full of groceries, and he pulls out this tube of AIM toothpaste. And we're like, Dad, what is that? And he had this big grin, because he loved a bargain. He goes, 99 cents. Just can't beat it. Inflation has gone up. It's now $1.29. And if you're not familiar with AIM toothpaste, think Elmer's glue with a mint flavoring. That's what you get. It likely causes more cavities than it prevents. And he was also a man of routine. He had a bowl of cereal every morning of his life, and the most profoundly cheap cereal he could find. Generic brand Bran Flakes. As you'll see, there are plants coming out of Bran Flakes boxes over on these tables. I also developed a taste for Bran Flakes, and when I went off to college, again, that defective chromosome, when I went off to college, I bought Bran Flakes, but one day, I saw the Wheaties, and I'm like, I'm gonna splurge, I'm gonna spend the extra $2 today. Way better. I can tell you with confidence, Wheaties brand uses vastly less sawdust and cardboard in their cereal. And I even called my dad. I remember I called my dad. I'm like, you got to stop. You're an engineer. You have a 6-figure salary. Buy Wheaties. He goes, nope. I'm a Bran Flakes kind of guy. And he was. But when I think of the generic cans of beans and the generic Bran Flakes, I just think of a man who saved money, not to spend it on himself, but to spend it on us. He put 3 kids through college. None of us have student debt. That's such a gift. I got to toil around the country playing pro baseball for $600 a month, $1,200 a month, up to a whopping $1,800 a month at my peak. So needless to say, I didn't retire rich from baseball. But that was a gift that he gave because he was such a good saver with my mom. They put everything back into our kids. And if it wasn't money going back into us, it was his time going back into the community. I was oftentimes the protector of my dad in some ways, and when I learned how little he got paid for the Aegis, which he loved writing for the Aegis, when I learned how little he made for each column, I was like, Dad, they're taking advantage of you. Like, you should ask for more money. Like, you're an amazing writer. And he goes, it's not about the money. He said, kids need to see their names in the paper. And if I don't write that column, no one will.
Sweet.
You know, he put so many hours into the Bill Brown, the Beller Festival of the Arts, his columns, the Hartford track meet. He did all these for other people, usually free. The Bill Brown was like a whopping $5 because he wanted to make sure everyone had access. Everyone had access to his sport that he loved and to good coaching and to just some wonderful event that could raise the energy level of this community. That was what my dad did. When I think of his frugality and his consistency and his routines, that's where all of that went. He saved to give it back to someone else. And so here we are in a ballpark. He did his Rotary meetings here. He loved, connecting with everyone in Rotary, and they would go out and do, their wonderful work here in the community. And of course, he sat at ballparks like this, watching me pitch over and over. And he was vastly more nervous than I was most of the time. But that's also who he was. My dad was someone who dove headfirst into your passion because he wanted to be there with you. He wanted to know what made you smile, what made you tick. And in 2013, his first book was published, and it wasn't on running. It was The Science of the Fastball, a pitching book, an engineer's exploration into pitching, because his son was a pitcher. And in my copy, it says, this book was an act of fatherly love. But we still need to talk about our shoes. I've got my Air Pegasus 89s on. And so many of you have running shoes on. Thank you for wearing them. You would be appalled at your choices. I went shopping at Dick's Sporting Goods, at Roadrunner Sport, we both love to go to sporting goods stores together, and I would pick up, hey Dad, what about this one? No, the heel's too thick, the padding foam was made in, Sri Lanka, can't have that. He was very specific about his shoes, very, very specific. We'd go through 20 or 30 pairs, like, hey Dad, if you wear this one, you'll look less nerdy.
Yeah.
But his love of shoes, again, he was an engineer. So when he looked at his own running gait, at the kids and men and women that he coached, he viewed runners as these amazing machines, and my dad was a machine. And he had such a passion for learning about the biomechanics of running and what kind of shoe is going to make this machine a little bit more optimally efficient. That was my dad. Running shoes have evolved quite a bit. We have some amazing technology, but he would eschew these technology. He didn't want cushion or insoles or arch support. My dad just wanted something that wasn't going to make him go fast. But when I think most about shoes, especially as the other athlete in the family, so many of us grow up with pressure to fill their father's shoes, their mother's shoes. And looking at this huge turnout today, who could grow up to fill my dad's shoes? But he never made me feel that way. And I think really what my dad's gift was, as both a parent, a husband, and a coach, is that he made so many people believe that they belonged on a big stage, that they could accomplish great things. And he made his knowledge and his training plans and everything that he did to make him successful, he made it accessible for so many other people. And I think my dad's real gift was convincing other people that their shoes were 5 sizes bigger than they thought they were. But as you know, my dad was not on this alone. This was not a solo mission. He and my mom, they were amazing partners, amazing parents, and they had an amazing marriage. And as I thought about my speech today and what I would say and how I would say it, I knew that I wanted to keep it light, and I was hoping for a couple laughs, because if you don't know, my dad met my mom at a Toastmasters meeting. She was working the door, helping people get registered and such, and he was a contestant. It was a best funny speech contest. And in classic Bill Blewett style, he just went ahead and won the damn thing. So he met my mom that night. He was shy. They didn't go out right away, but he got her number, and the rest is history. And for 42 years, they evolved together, they grew together, they went through all the different seasons of life and transitions that couples go through, and they could not have modeled love better for us kids. You know, we are the product of the people that we were around, and we saw two people love each other so much they held hands in the ballpark, they held hands at track meets, they held hands on the couch, and she held his hand as he took his last breath. And as my mom transitioned, you know, she went back to work after raising us kids. And he encouraged her every step of the way. She had to take some lower paying nonprofit jobs at first. And my dad was burned out and didn't love his last couple years at work, but he said, you know what, Jonah, I'm gonna keep going. We need the money so that you can take your turn and rise up the ladder in the nonprofit world and have your passion. It's your turn. He always did that for her. It was never just about him. He was encouraging my mom every step of the way. And when she started to explore this spiritual side of her, he was there to listen and believe and dive in just the same. If he'd had the time, I'm sure he would have written a book about my mom and her spiritual journey. And then my mom had to make this transition that I just can't imagine how hard it was, from wife to caregiver. And we watched her put all of her grandkids and her kids on a rowboat and send us off so that we could continue to live our lives while she treaded water with him. Some very deep, dark water. And she was there with him until the very end. My mom was his true love, and they were so strong together. So as I go forward, I'll still see him in the mirror. I'll see him in my writing. When I work with kids, when I make videos on YouTube and speak, I'll see my dad. I won't see him when I brush my teeth because I buy really good toothpaste. But I'll always keep him with me. And I know he's been here today getting all of us through this. I hope you keep a place for my dad as well, and that you continue to encourage others in the community and carry out his legacy, and help someone else believe that their shoes are 5 sizes bigger than they believe as well. Thank you.